Colonel Birger Eriksen is looking out over the sea from the 19th century fortress, Oscarsborg, as searchlights pan the Oslo fjord. Warships have been spotted on their way towards the Norwegian capital, but the commanding officer doesn't know the nationality of the ships. Norway is neutral, but Eriksen knows that the Norwegian government was much more in favor of the British than the Germans. He has ordered the 3 cannons to be loaded with combat ammunition. The fortress is heavily understaffed, and most of the soldiers are new recruits, having been stationed there only a week earlier. In order to be able to man the guns, he has ordered cooks and other non-military personnel on the island to help. As the searchlight swipes over the fjord, he suddenly sees the contours of the ships. He no longer hesitates. Warships coming at night, with all their lights turned off, are not friendly. For the first time in 125 years, Norway is at war. One of the officers hesitates and asks his commander.
Skal vi skyte med skarpt, hva om vi tar feil?
Eriksen replies.
Hvis fanden skal der skytes med skarpt.
Birger Eriksen now remarks to one of his officers.
Enten blir jeg stilt for krigsrett, eller så blir jeg krigshelt.
Birger Eriksen now orders his guns to fire. The first shot hits the German heavy cruiser, Blücher, midship, and is a perfect hit. He then orders the second gun to fire. This also is a perfect hit. Blücher now drifts out of range for the cannons at 6 knots, towards the secret torpedo battery that the Norwegians have hidden under the waterline. The phone rings and Major Andreas Andersen asks a short and direct question.
Skal der torpederes?
The answer from Birger Eriksen is.
Det skal torpederes.
2 torpedoes are fired, the first hits the bow, but the second torpedo scores a perfect hit. Blücher now tips to starboard side and starts to sink. This is crucial, because this delays the German invasion with 8 to 9 hours, giving the king, the government, and the Norwegian gold reserve time to escape. This would prove decisive for the Norwegian war effort, and it was crucial in order to hold Norwegian morale and resistance going through the Nazi occupation. This is the incredible story of the Norwegian gold run.
Vet hva de sier? Krig er en alt for alvorlig sak til å legge i hendene på de militære.
Fredrik Haslund is a secretary for the Labour Party. He has just celebrated his daughter's birthday when the German invasion starts. He receives a phone call, ordering him to leave his family, and come to help with the attempted escape of the government and the king.
Vi sitter på sensitiv informasjon som tyskerne absolutt ikke må få tak i.
Det er ikke sånn at du driver det kontoret. Du er en sekretær.
Fredrik doesn't know that he soon will be leading the great Norwegian gold run, and he doesn't know that this will be the last time he sees his family, for more than 1.5 years. Although Norway was neutral when World War II broke out, Nicolai Rygg, the director of Norges Bank, where the nation's gold reserves resided, made preparations in case Norway should fall or a crisis develop. After Rygg learned that German warships were headed up the Oslo fjord, the decision was made to immediately evacuate the gold to the bank in Lillehammer. 26 trucks were chartered from local merchants, and the drivers were directed to the side entrance of the bank, but were not informed about what they would be carrying. Bank guards were placed close to the bank to keep inquisitive eyes away, but the military was not used, to avoid drawing attention to the operation. The bank employees now started to load the gold on the trucks. Each truck, along with 1 or 2 armed bank guards, drove away immediately after loading, so there was no convoy to draw the attention of the Luftwaffe. The last truck left shortly before 1:30 p.m. German soldiers marched down the main street of Oslo at exactly the same time. The commander of the Oslo garrison surrendered the city at 2 p.m. at the Akershus fort, only a couple hundred yards from Norges Bank. The gold shipment totaled 818 large crates, 685 smaller crates, and 39 kegs of gold coins. Vehicles and pedestrians fleeing the capital slowed down the trucks, and people became angry because the trucks didn't stop to help them. Lillehammer was 183 kilometers from Oslo, and the trucks traveled over snow-laden and muddy roads, all while being hunted by the Germans. All the trucks drive separately, so they won't be targeted by German planes. Of the 421 million crowns stored in the bank, 300 million was shipped to Lillehammer. The rest was left in the vault because Norwegian law did not allow all the gold to be removed from the bank at one time, even if it would fall into enemy hands. And Norwegians, being Norwegians, of course followed the law. The last truck with gold arrived at the bank in Lillehammer at 8 p.m. The bank employees in Lillehammer tucked the gold away in the vault. However, they could only unload the cargo when the Luftwaffe wasn't flying over them. The gold remained at Lillehammer for 10 days while the Norwegians barricaded the roads and kept the Germans from advancing by laying ambushes. Nikolai Rigg checked on the gold twice, and on the second trip, he asked the bank manager, Andreas Lund, to memorize the numbers to the vault lock, in case he is captured. But after 10 days, it became obvious that the Germans could overtake Lillehammer at any time. Oscar Torp, the Norwegian Minister of Finance, now tasks Fredrik with the responsibility of transporting the gold from Lillehammer to the port of Andelsens, where the British Royal Navy hopefully could bring the gold safely away. When Fredrik asks how long he has to think about it before answering, Oscar Torp responded.
Jeg spør deg ikke om dette som en venn. Jeg ber deg ikke om en tjeneste her, det er en ordre. Du får her på oppdraget å lede transporten av norske statsgullbåndene.
Torp gives him extensive powers, and the expedition is codenamed the Heavy Luggage. Not very original, or hard to guess what the code name was about, but what can you do when the Nazis are after you? To help him, Fredrik gets a military escort consisting of a major, Bjørn Sunde, 2 sergeants, and 30 soldiers. They were armed with shovels so they would appear to be preparing to dig trenches. Instead, they were to quietly transport and load the trucks, which took the gold to the railway station, a short distance away. The soldiers are local men from Gulltransporten, with one exception, a guy from Bergen. The famous poet Nordahl Grieg has volunteered for military service at Lillehammer. He observes, Fredrik is a cheerful and a bit chubby man, who dresses in a sports suit and a ski hat. This good-natured style, Nordahl observes, makes everyone submit to his regulations, from majors and governors, to truck drivers and soldiers. Fredrik's plan is to transport the gold by train. First they will take the train to Dombas, from there they will take the Rama line, further down to Andelsens. There the gold can hopefully be sent by a British warship to England. At midnight on April 19th, orders came to open the vault door. Unfortunately, due to fear and anxiety, Lund had a difficult time getting the lock to the brand new vault open. It had only been opened once before, and Lund was operating by memory. He has memorized all of the numbers except the first and the last, a total of 18 numbers. 30 minutes passes without the bank manager being able to remember the code. Torp now gives permission to blow the door open with dynamite. Just as they are about to give up, the numbers finally click in, at 1 a.m. in the morning. Lund finally succeeded with the code, saying later, that it was the worst 30 minutes of his life. The gold was loaded onto the wooden railcars. The small group of soldiers was ordered to accompany the train, but the men weren't told what they were guarding. However, they soon figured out the content, because of the Norges Bank initials displayed on the outside of each container. The train left Lillehammer at 4 a.m., with its lights dimmed in case any Luftwaffe aircraft flew over. Fredrik later writes,
"The whole town slept, not a candle was lit in the streets, not a ray of light from any window. There was no sound, it was like the bottom of a deep dark grave."
But the Germans has intercepted a Norwegian message and now knows where the gold is headed. When dawn approached, the train stopped at Odda and pulled onto a siding to wait for a safer time to proceed. Later, a train arrived at Odda station from the north with 3 carriages full of British soldiers who had their thumbs in the air. The Norwegians were encouraged, little did they know what dangers lay ahead. After a 24-hour wait at Odda, the gold train left and arrived at the port town of Andelsens, early in the morning. The Germans now starts a vicious bombing attack on Andelsens. And Fredrik is forced to send the gold train to a siding at Romsdalshorn, a few kilometers away. Incredibly, they managed to get away without any loss of life, and with the gold intact. Towering mountains guard the tiny station, making it a perfect place to hide a train. Due to the constant daytime bombing, a crew of railwaymen worked in 12-hour shifts to repair the area's rail lines. On the night of April 24th, Fredrik ordered the gold train to be brought down to the dock in Andelsens. He will try to load some of the gold on the British cruiser Galatea. 200 boxes, with 9 tons of gold is loaded on board the British ship. Fredrik also had 4 wagons, 34 tons of gold, at Rondal station. Fredrik meets his sister, Nini, and her husband, and give them the task to save the cash they also have with them, and to flee to Molde where the government is. The Norwegians expected German soldiers to come up the valley into Andelsens, at any moment. Only hours remained to move the gold. An army captain obtained 25 trucks and drivers, and in 2 hours' time, all the gold was removed from the train and loaded on the trucks. Before they drive away, Nordahl Grieg holds a poetic pep talk for the soldiers. In order for the cars not to arouse suspicion among the German pilots, they keep a good distance when they drive off. In front, Fredrik and Nordahl drive together when they are spotted by 4 German planes. They jump out of the cars, while splinters fly through the air, and they seek refuge in a road ditch. While they are lying there in danger of death each under his own bush, Nordahl sees something. Fredrik is amused.
"He gave a very lyrical lecture to me about the flowers of spring, being inspired by a small white flower, which quite contrary to the order of nature, was shut up on a small bare spot between the snow."
It quickly gets too hot around their ears when the planes take a new run towards them. They turn and run for their lives, down to a brewery nearby. A number of British soldiers have already sought refuge there. They lie with their face pressed down into the ground floor. In the absence of anything else, Fredrik and Nordahl protect their heads with wash basins. It makes the British soldiers smile and giggle, and the atmosphere becomes laughable. When the attack is over, Fredrik and Nordahl are in a hurry to move the cars, that unbelievably, are not damaged. They reach the crossing that will take them to the other side. The ferry arrived, but could only carry 2 trucks across the water at a time. It took 6 hours to convey all the trucks to the other side. Trucks broke down and had to be replaced, and the crews became exhausted unloading and reloading the gold. Eventually the convey arrived at the port of Molde, on Friday 26th of April, where the Norwegian government, King Haakon, and Crown Prince Olav were taking cover. Fredrik has had a high fever and severe bronchitis, but he does not have time to be ill. Mold is the Germans' new bombing target and his leadership qualities are more important than ever. The city's safest place according to local experts is the vault in the basement of the superb clothing factory. They bring the gold there. The next few days the town is bombed constantly by the Germans, and on April 29th, the house next door had caught fire. Fredrik, Nini and the soldiers quickly run to save the gold, but they can't open the door, because they don't have the key. Close by, a bomb blows up a big door, and they use the door part to force the door open. They carry out all the gold and the money. Fredrik later said that it was so hot that he thought his eyebrows would burn off. They managed to get all the valuables away, and at the same time as they round the corner, 40,000 liters of fuel blows up. Had they been there 1 minute longer, they would all be dead. Now HMS Glasgow is sent by the British, and Fredrik wants to get the gold on board, but how? The whole town is on fire. He uses local boats to ship the gold out to Glasgow. 23 tons are loaded on board the ship. But the ship is now leaving, due to the relentless German attacks. Later Fredrik writes,
The planes flew so low that they almost hit Glasgow. There were bomb explosions everywhere and the fire from the machine guns looked like fireballs.
They are on the pier while the bombing continues. But as soon as the government and the king is on board, HMS Glasgow leaves Mold.
Torp, vi trenger mer tid.
Her har ikke jeg noe jeg skal sagt.
Og hva gjør vi med fuelet? Det er 18 tonn.
Vi må frakte det videre. Lykke til.
Without any boats or ships, they load the rest of the gold on board a ship they had been warned against, because of its poor condition, the Drive. But Fredrik doesn't have much of a choice, and they try to transport the rest north with Drive. On April 30th, Drive is spotted by a German plane and attacked. To avoid being sunk, the Drive's first mate beached the craft on a flat shoreline. Bombs fell around them but landed in the sea. They all jump off to get away, but there is nowhere to hide and the plane turns around to attack them again. Nini later said, "A bomb exploded 2 meters away from me, but the explosion went over my head and I was unhurt." As the tide came in, another steamer pulled the Drive back out into the fjord. Grieg later said, "God holds a protective hand over us." The next day, Sverre Bell, a cashier from Norges Bank, dies in his bed. He had been with the gold since they left Oslo and experienced all the attacks they had been under during the trip. He was the only person to die during the gold run. In the meantime, near Mold, Fredrik decides that the gold should be moved to fishing vessels because the Drive was too much of a target for the Germans. Word was sent to the Drive to rendezvous at the village of Gems. The remaining gold was transported by truck to Gems and loaded onto fishing boats there. They get help from some local fishermen and load the gold on 5 fishing boats, before they sail north. They only sail at night to avoid being spotted, and they sail close to the shoreline. They reach Kvalvag, but with all the reloading they had done, they feared that the word had got out, and that the Germans would soon find them. Everybody was now given weapons, and Nini later wrote, "The weapons we expect to use on ourselves, no one can guarantee that they don't break under torture." One of the captains commented on how impressed he was with Nini and how calm she was. The people they now meet in a small fishing community are skeptical towards them, since they can't tell the locals what they are doing.
De vet ikke hvem jeg er. De tror vi er tyskere.
He now tries to requisite some of the local fishermen's boats, but they refuse and says that a requisition isn't necessary, they would do this voluntarily. Even though they had no idea what they were taking part in, the captains offered them to go anywhere, in Norway or abroad. Fredrik now dismisses everybody that isn't strictly necessary, they will continue with only a handful of people. Christian Gleditsch and Nordahl Grieg are sent out with a fishing boat, to look for a British ship they believe is in the area. They are spotted by a German plane that starts to circle around them. They quickly grab the fishing net on the boat and pretend to be fishermen, even though they have no clue on how to do it. It works and the plane turns away. They sail towards Tromsø, where the sun is shining 24 hours a day and they are now not protected by darkness. The British has also put out water mines, and all they have is a hand-drawn map, made by a local fisherman. They zigzag through the minefield and are able to pass almost 300 mines to safety. At one point, a submarine periscope suddenly appeared only 20 meters away from them. They quickly turn away and avoid a collision with only a few meters. The 9th of May, 1 month to the day after the invasion started, they reach Tromsø. He awaits orders from the government on what to do next. Nordahl is asked to compose a poem for Norway's National Day, the 17th of May. He reads it for the first time to one of the local fishermen.
I dag står flaggstangen naken blant Eidsvolls grønnede trær. Men nettopp I denne timen vet vi hva frihet er. Det stiger en sang over landet, seirende I sitt språk, skjønt visket med lukkede lever under de fremmedes åk. Der fødes I oss en visshet, frihet og et liv er ett. Så enkelt, så uunnværlig, som menneskets åndedrett. Vi følte da trelldommen truet, at lungene gispet I nød, som I en sunket ubåt. Vi vil ikke dø slik død. Nå slåss vi for retten til å puste. Vi vet det må demre en dag, da nordmenn forenes I samme befriende åndedrag. Vi skiltes fra våre sydpå, fra bleke utslitte menn. Til dere gitt et løfte, at vi skal komme igjen. Her skal vi minnes de døde, som ga sitt liv for vår fred. Soldaten I blod på sneen, sjømannen som gikk ned. Vi så få her I landet, hver fallen bror og venn. Vi har de døde med oss, den dag de kommer igjen.
When Grieg asked the captain what he thought of the poem, he answered in a typical, northern Norwegian way.
Det var ikke det verste, Grieg.
The British now decide to leave Norway, and the British offers to take the rest of the gold, Fredrik and the others with them. On May 21st, the gold was loaded on the HMS Enterprise, and the gold sailed for England 2 days later. HMS Enterprise was attacked twice on the voyage, but none of the bombs hit their target and she safely docked at Plymouth in England. The Norwegian gold reserve was safe, after an incredible run through Norway, lasting almost 6 weeks, and spanning over 2,000 kilometers.
Mot alle odds har Fredrik Haslund og hans folk klart å få med seg alt gullet, vekk fra de tyskokkuperte områdene I sør. Flukten ut av Oslo, bombingen ved Kjeller, hvelvet I Lillehammer, Åndalsnes som ble nærmest utsletta, Molde. Bombingen av Driva og fiskebåtene sin farefulle ferd nordover. I stedet for avslutningen på 6 intense uker, blir det her for Haslund starten på over 5 år borte fra hjemlandet.
A year later, Fredrik's wife and daughter must flee Norway, when the German starts to target the families of those involved in the gold run. They flee to Sweden, then to the Soviet Union, where they travel with the Trans-Siberian Railway to Asia, before leaving with a ship from Japan, to the United States. They are on one of the very last Japanese ships that docks in America, before Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and war broke out between these two countries. Fredrik meets his wife, Ingrid, and their daughter,
Vesle meg.
who many years later would become my mother. In America, Fredrik and Ingrid have 2 more children, before returning to a liberated Norway in 1945. I hope you found this presentation interesting.
That was great.
And if you did, please smash the like and subscribe buttons as if you were a Viking berserker. I cover a lot of historical topics here on my channel, so check out my other videos to see if there are others you find interesting. And I hope to see you in the next one.